Okay, welcome everyone. Just about ready to start. It's time. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. So we're going through the list of 11 items in the Mahanama Sutta, and currently we're dealing with the second half, which is 6 contemplations. And we did the Buddhanusati, contemplation of the Buddha, last week. And this week we're going to do Dhammanusati, contemplation of the Dhamma. So as with Buddhanusati, the traditional way to do it is to direct the mind to contemplate the different attributes of the Dhamma as they're found in the chant beginning Iti Piso. Before we get into the specific attributes, I'll say a few general words about the meaning of Dhamma. Of course, it's known to many by the Sanskrit form Dharma. It's the same word. You know, I say potato, you say potato. Dhamma is the Pali version of the Sanskrit Dharma. And Dhamma refers in the most general way to reality or the underlying truth of things. We talk about Buddha Dhamma as the Dhamma taught by the Buddha. But it's important to bear in mind that the Buddha did not invent the Dhamma. He discovered it. He himself said that whether a Buddha appears in the world or not, the Dhamma remains valid, even if it's not understood or known by people. And he compared his discovery of Dhamma to an explorer finding a lost city in the jungle and clearing away the weeds and vines and uncovering a beautiful city. So the Dhamma is an expression of ultimate reality. The particular form of the Dhamma taught by the Buddha Dhamma, bears a stylistic mark of the man himself as well as his time and milieu. As a Kshatriya of northern India in the 6th century BC. But the underlying message would be the same whenever or wherever the Buddha arose. The Dhamma then, in a sense, has a priority over the Buddha. And this is illustrated by an incident shortly after the Buddha's enlightenment, when he was reflecting in his mind that it is good for all beings to be in service. And he examined with his Buddha Chaku, his Buddha eye, his psychic power, he examined all the beings in the universe to try and discover if there's any being worthy for him to serve, and he found none. Being the Buddha, he's the supreme in the universe. So he decided that he should devote himself to serving the Dhamma. And it's added that all Buddhas make the same resolution to spend their life in service to the Dhamma. So he revealed the Dhamma out of compassion. He didn't create the Dhamma or invent it. He discovered it and then revealed it and taught it, put it into contemporary language, and instructed people how to find it for themselves. There's also a different use of the word Dhamma that sometimes might cause confusion. In Abhidhamma, a Dhamma is a unitary aspect of reality, like an atom. It's although there's mental dhammas as well as physical dhammas. One translator chose to call them point instants. A point instant, which is not bad. It's actually quite clever, because a point is a mathematical construct that has location without extension. And an instant is the equivalency of that in time. So it's a location in time without duration. So it's the smallest possible reality would be a point instant. And the entire world, our minds and bodies and the external world, are composed of different classes of dhammas. And Abhidhamma is the study of this. Now, the word Dhamma used here is not entirely unrelated to Dhamma in the broader sense, because a Dhamma is the smallest possible unit of reality. So a Dhamma is a point instant. It's a reality at the smallest possible grain, whereas Dhamma, or the Dhamma, is an expression of all reality. In English, you'll see in English books and writing, often these two uses of the word Dhamma are distinguished by capitalizing Dhamma, the big Dhamma, and leaving Dhamma as a unit, point incident, a tiny unit, as a small d, lowercase d. That's a kind of a useful convention, but it really is a modern invention, because none of the alphabets that the Asian alphabets that Pali is written in, such as Sinhalese or Siamese, have this distinction between lower and uppercase, and nor do any of the Indian alphabets. So it's a modern convention. It's not. It's a convenient distinction, but it has no historical relevance. So the Dhamma, broadly speaking, is an expression of reality, or is the fundamental nature of reality, and more particularly, it's the expression of that, the explanation of that by the Buddha, which we sometimes call Buddha Dhamma. And this is well known that the formulation of Buddha Dhamma is in such concepts as the Four Noble Truths, the dependent origination, the three characteristics, etc. But these are expressions or ways of explanation of an underlying reality that exists, whether the Buddha explains it or not. So the characteristics of Dhamma. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sandidiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanahiko Pachatangwe Titabo Wenyuhiti. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo means the Dhamma that is well explained by the Blessed One. So we're here referring particularly to the Buddha Dhamma, the Dhamma as explained by the Buddha, but the the more general Dhamma as underlying reality is also born in mind. Sandidiko means apparent here and now. This is one of the characteristics of Dhamma, is that it's not to be thought of as some esoteric, strange, mysterious construction, but it's an expression of actual reality. And things like the Four Noble Truths, we can see it's apparent here and now that there is suffering in the world. And with a little investigation, we can see that it comes from craving. So sandidiko means that it's accessible. It's something that we can examine for ourselves. So it's readily apparent to one who will make an honest investigation and look. Akaliko means timeless, and that has a number of different connotations. It's timeless in the sense that it's valid at all times. Lived and taught in the 6th century BC, but even in the 21st century AD, it's all valid. It isn't. It never becomes worn out or obsolete. It's always because it's an expression of an underlying actual reality. It cannot ever become outdated. Also, another meaning of akaliko, timeless, is that the highest dhammas, which is like nibbana, the unconditioned, is outside of time and space. It has no relevance or reference to time. Time is a function of samsara. So we're looking at nibbana as akaliko, meaning it's outside of time. This is why the Buddha would refer to nibbana as amata, the deathless, which is to be distinguished from eternal, which would be nitya. It's an expression with a negative prefix, amata, undying. It doesn't say ever living, it's undying. So, death does not apply. Birth does not apply. It's also ajada. These do not apply because they're events situated in linear time, which has no reference to nibbana. The next characteristic is ehipassiko, which means come and see. It's the literal translation. Ehi is come here, and passiko is to see or seeing. This is an expression that the Buddha used to describe the Dhamma, which invites investigation. He says, come and check it out. Now, this is very different from some other religious teachers who would say, this is the absolute truth. You have to take it as stated. Don't question it. The Buddha says, no, come and check it out. Examine it for yourself. Ehipassiko. Which is also an expression, if you think about it, it's an expression of his supreme confidence in the teaching, that it can stand up to that examination. It doesn't require the listener to suspend his judgment. The verb ehi, this is kind of a side note, but it's sort of interesting that the verb ehi, come here, also occurs in the texts referring to what is called the ehi ordination, or ehi upasampada. In the early days of the Buddhist Sangha, before it became spread out, and they were all closely related or in the presence of the Buddha, physical proximity in such a small group. They could all be in the presence of the Buddha. There was no formal ordination ceremony. If someone wanted to become a monk, the entire procedure was for the Buddha to say, "Ehi bhikkhu, come here, bhikkhu," and then the person is considered a bhikkhu. The commentary adds a colorful touch to this. It says that when the Buddha uttered the phrase "Ehi bhikkhu," the individual would miraculously have a shaved head and robes and a bowl, and just like turn into a fully dressed bhikkhu instantly. So "Ehi pasiko," "opanahiko" is the translation is has two possibilities. It could either mean leading onwards or leading inwards, but they actually have the same underlying meaning, because the way onward is inward in the spiritual life, where we should be doing an inwardly directed exploration, and the way onward is inward, and the way inward is onward. So this means, whichever way you take it, it means that the Buddhist path is productive of results. It's progressive in that way. It leads onwards. It is not a dead end. It leads onwards to greater wisdom and compassion and finally enlightenment. And the final phrase of characteristics of the Dhamma is "Apachatang we titapo vinyuhiti," which means that it is possible to attain by one's own effort for the wise. Or those with the capacity for it. When the Buddha was after his enlightenment, when he was contemplating not teaching, and the Brahma Sahampati came and asked him on bended knee, out of compassion, to go forth and teach the beings in the world, one of the phrases he used was, "There are those with little dust in their eyes who are perishing from not hearing the Dhamma." So the Dhamma is intended for those with little dust in their eyes. It's intended for those with some inherent wisdom. The great mass of beings in the world will not be exposed to the Dhamma. They won't have the kamma to be exposed to the Dhamma. And if they don't have the capacity for it, it's like a metal spoon in a bowl of spicy soup. That the spoon does not can stay in that spicy soup all day. It does not pick up the flavor of the soup, which is an analogy that's actually used in one of the texts. So when but this is also, in a broader consideration, this really doesn't exclude absolutely any being, because in the long course of samsara, we all go through various transformations. And those of us who have had the excellent kamma to be born human in this life in the first place is already rare. And then to be born as a human being and have the capacity and the opportunity to hear and practice the Dhamma is even more rare. So those are the characteristics of the Dhamma, and a few words about the meaning and nature of Dhamma or Dharma. And now I'll stop with my discourse and go into looking at questions. Let's see. It looks like there's some up there already. Someone's comment. This is an interesting comment. The etymological similarities between the words Dhamma, Adam, Adama, and Adam are interesting. Possibly. I mean, that's a good observation, but I'm a little skeptical that Adam would fit into that list, because it's a word from an entirely different language family. Next, can you please talk about the history of the term Buddha replacing Sugato, Bhagavat, Tathagata? You touched upon it last week. Can you explain a bit more? Is there any movement to go back to Bhagavat? Actually, I don't have a definitive answer for that. I'm kind of curious about that myself. I do think that the choice of the word Buddha was actually fairly early, because you can see the word Buddha often used in the Sudimagga, for example. And in Thai, the Buddha is usually referred to as Praput, which is Thai version of Lord Buddha. So it's pretty universal, and goes back a long way. I don't really see any harm to it. It's just a curiosity that you don't find the Buddha referred to as Buddha in the Pali Canon very often. It's much less common than Sugato, Bhagavat, or Tathagata. Next question. Can we understand that Dhamma is ehipassiko at each moment continuously? There is always the opportunity to see it. Yes. Yeah. If one is open to it, the Dhamma is always there, is always present. No, there's nothing else really. In the broadest sense, there is nothing else but Dhamma. Everything is Dhamma. Bhante, isn't the pursuit of sukha and getting away from dukkha still in the same of tanha, but it's on the flip side? Because in the Atthakavaga Sutta, the Buddha said the Muni who's free is neither inclined to dukkha nor to sukha, and there's no inclination to views. Isn't that the essence of anatta? Seeking pleasure, sukha, or escaping pain, dukkha, is really just two sides of the same thing. Attachment and aversion, or repulsion, are really just two versions of the same mind state. One positive, one negative. And the quote from the Atthakavaga, the Muni is free, who is free, is neither inclined to dukkha nor to sukha, and has no inclination to views. That's one taking a stand on equanimity, upekkha. That it's it's a neutral feeling tone, and in the lowest sense, the most basic sense, is just being neither having neither pleasure nor pain. But there's a higher sense of upekkha, in which one is not moved towards those extremes. And not being inclined to views would be views in that context is particularly michaditi, or false view, but views in general, not having someone who's truly liberated in the mind would not have a need to establish a view about everything. But it's part of upekkha. being in the middle. Someone in the last moment of consciousness before he dies, he remembers his pet. Will the next rebirth be in the animal realm, or does it take another course due to his karma that he did in his life? Um, I don't, I can't answer that definitively. There's so many factors that go into deciding rebirth. The Buddha himself said that understanding karma is beyond our capacity. Fully understanding in detail. The last mind moments before one dies have a strong bearing on taking a future rebirth. If I could venture a speculation here, it would depend. I think it would depend a lot on the form of the thought about the pet. If it was a thought of desire, or like a longing, I'm going to miss my pet, then that would have a bad effect of tending to lower the resonance of consciousness and tend toward a lower rebirth. But if it's a compassionate thought, like who's going to feed my poor dog now, there's a compassion towards the animal, that would be a higher thought. If the Buddha hadn't taught the Dhamma to the world without the request from the Deva, then would he have been classified historically as a Pratyeka Buddha? He would be, yes. He would have been a Pratyeka Buddha, but he wouldn't be classified such historically because he'd be forgotten. No one would have heard of him now. So there'd be nothing to classify. He would just have been a flash in the pan and forgotten. Sometimes in Dhamma circles, you hear reference of 84,000 world systems and 84,000 Dhammas. How are these two terms to be understood? 84,000 is a favorite number. I think, the ancient Indians love big numbers, and I get the feeling 84,000 is used as a modern person might say a gazillion. Like just means a lot. It's not really referencing a specific number. How will they be Pratyeka Buddhas? They also wear monk's robes. Well, in the descriptions in the stories about Pratyeka Buddhas, they're usually they are dressed in robes, and sometimes they live in communities. There's quite a literature in the commentaries of stories about Pratyeka Buddhas, but their defining characteristic is that they don't leave a teaching behind. They don't, and it's very specific. They know they have a realization of Nibbana, but they're unable to teach anyone else to find it. They can teach people morality and even jhana, but they can't teach how to find Nibbana. Do you think that Dhamma available today has been changed or polluted in comparison to the Dhamma available in the time of the Buddha? Well, there's all kinds of teachings out there in the world, which are various degrees of fidelity to the original Dhamma taught by the Buddha. But we still have the original Pali text to refer to. So we haven't lost the original teachings of the Buddha by any means, even if some people are misrepresenting them. Yeah. There are some who hear the Dhamma, practice the Dhamma, but never progress or reach Maggapala. How could we live in a way to ensure a favorable future birth where we can hear and practice Dhamma? Well, I think you answer your own question in a way, because if one is studying Dhamma, practicing Dhamma in this life, and keeping good morality, keeping the precepts, you're setting the karmic seeds for favorable future birth, and it may be that one does not attain Magapala in this life. It may take more than one lifetime. There's a Zen story I heard once about the master and two students, and the first student asks the master, "Can you tell how long will it be till I attain enlightenment?" And the master says, 500 lifetimes. And the fellow goes away all despondent, brokenhearted. Oh no, 500 lifetimes. Then the second student asks the same question and he gets the same answer, and he goes away rejoicing. Oh my, such a short time, just 500 more lifetimes. In the big picture of the infinity of samsara, 500 lifetimes is compared to the number of lifetimes you already spent. It's not a great deal. In your last week talk, you spoke about a bodhisattva getting a blessing or prediction from a living Buddha that the bodhisattva will become a Sammasan Buddha. Does this occur to Pacceka Buddha? Sometimes there are specific predictions that someone is going to attain to Pacceka Buddhahood. It's said, for example, that Devadatta, who tried to kill the Buddha, was reborn in hell, and he will spend a very long time in hell, but then he'll be reborn as a human and become a Pacceka Buddha. May I ask you a Mahayana question? In Yogacara Majjhimika, I heard that the smallest Dhamma and theravada are supposed not to be empty, which is not the case in Yogacara. Is there any truth in this? No, it's not true. It's a misrepresentation. The Dhammas have the in Theravada Abhidhamma, the Dhammas have the inherent characteristic of sunya, of emptiness. There's no self-substance in any Dhamma. It may be, I think this misrepresentation, which is very common, it may come about because the Yogacaras and Majjhimikas in India, the school, so-called Hinayana school that they would have been in contact with Sarvastivada. And I'm not even sure if Sarvastivada, if that's a fair criticism of Sarvastivada, but you can see other instances in Yogacara Majjhimika critiques of Hinayana that they're not referencing Theravada at all, they're referencing Sarvastivada. In a place that's similar to a desert where there's no food, if I give food and water to animals, is that on the dana scale big or small merit? That's definitely merit, and giving food or water to animals is considered meritorious. It's more meritorious to give it to a human being, and it's even more meritorious to give it to an enlightened human being. But there's still a great deal of merit, especially if in a situation like, as you cite, like in where food is hard to come by. If you're just feeding squirrels in the park and they're already fat and happy, there's some merit to it, but not a great deal. Next one. Given different interpretations, translations of suttas by different teachers, how does one distinguish what is true Dhamma and what is not? Well, one has to make the effort to study for themselves and go back to the original. Ideally, that would mean learning the original languages and studying in Pali. But even just to acquire some vocabulary in Pali, some understanding of the technical terms, I think is very important and useful. What I find in even the very best translations, it's unavoidable because the languages are not completely isomorphic, that many of the words that have become commonly used in English to translate Pali terms are misleading because they're not quite right. And when you get into people's own interpretations, and yeah, you have to use some judgment there. Venerable Ajahn, does a mother bring in food and giving it to her child considered dana, or is it just responsibility? Um, well, it's both. It's both, really. Certainly, the the whole process of mothering a child is is a very generous, self-sacrificing act. Um, and if it's done well, it's very meritorious. How can a Pachika Buddha teach morality in jhana but not nibbana? They don't have the gift of exposition and teaching as the Buddha did. Even though we can see even now that teaching it and speaking, writing about the highest dhammas like nibbana is very difficult. And if there's no, we have at least in our current age, we have the teachings of the Buddha recorded that we can rely on, but a Pacceka Buddha doesn't have that. His only possibility would be to come up with his own language, and it may be that he decides whatever I say is going to be misleading. I can't speak skillfully about nibbana. I'll just say nothing. Could we say that death in its simplest form is anicca, dukkha, anatta because it is a subject of suffering, and the changing aspects, and because of the changing aspects, there's no real essence? Yeah, that's true. So is birth. Birth and death and life are all anicca, dukkha, anatta. Next one. I have a deeply rooted sankhara of ideal romantic love. How do you personally see romantic love? What advice do you give to uproot it? It's not lust as much as it is the idealization of romance. Yeah. Well, it's a attachment. It's rooted in sensuality, and it's an attachment. And there's no it's natural human beings to pair bond, to be attracted male to female and vice versa. But it's not liberating in any way. And the actual form of romantic love, the actual what would you call it, like the mode or the typology of romantic love as we know it in the West is really a historically limited. It's rooted in the origin of it goes back to the 13th century in the troubadour culture in southern France, and who first made a big poetic idealization of the pair bonding. Still, that influence still lingers in the West. To the question about the Bodhisattva being blessed by a living Buddha, does that mean there is really no time gap between Buddhas and next exists at the same? Well, linear time is a construct of samsara. So, in the sense of linear time, there's a huge gap between the Pankara Buddha and the present Buddha, which is 92 aeons. 92 world systems came and went in between. So that would be hundreds of billions of years in our terminology. But for a Buddha who is completely cognizant of the unconditioned of nibbana, he's in that sense he's outside of time, so that the linear gap is not relevant. The Pacceka Buddha, as a continuous to this question, how can a Pacceka Buddha arise? So they arise in linear time, in between the appearances of Buddhas. Are you familiar with the concept of chitta of the Thai forest tradition? Yes, I am. Could you comment on this, please? Ajahn, such as Mahabua, mentioned it quite a bit. It seems to be based on a potential misunderstanding of vijnana, but I'm curious of your thoughts on the concept itself. Yeah, that's actually a very big topic, very interesting one. That the Thai Ajahns, particularly the Ajahn Mun tradition and Ajahn Mahabua as the exponent of that tradition, they use the concept of chitta quite a bit. It's used in a different sense in the Abhidhamma. In the Abhidhamma, chitta is one of the ultimate realities, and it exists as a dhamma, and meaning a momentary occurrence. Consciousness arises to an object. Chitta, the word chitta, is not used very often in the suttas, very rarely, and mostly only in compounds. But vijnana is used more frequently. But then vijnana is also used in very specific contexts, like the six vijnanas of the six senses, and vijnana in the dependent origination, and vijnana in the five khandhas. So, if leaving the Thai interpretation aside for a moment, it looks like vijnana and chitta are almost synonymous, and we could say that chitta is the universal principle, and vijnana is the specific application of how it plays out in sequence and reality. The Ajahn Mahabua went so far as, or Ajahn Mun, I should say, went so far as in one of the very few fragmentary teachings of his that survives. He talks about the chitta outside the five khandhas. And this is considered to be heretical by, for example, the Sri Lankan Buddhist Publication Society won't publish the Mahabua school writings because they say it's a misrepresentation of Dhamma, and it leans towards eternalism. I think there's a possible. I've suggested this in one or two of my talks. A possible resolution of the two interpretations of chitta, if we look at a third interpretation, the Sarvastivada way of speaking about chitta. The Sarvastivada school was actually the predominant school in India for a long time. Theravada was way off in the south. It was kind of a tiny off branch. Sarvastivada was the main school, and their name of their school means all exists. Sarvastivada. Everything is. And this refers specifically to the three times, past, present, and future, all exist. So they had this unique interpretation of time. And one way I've seen it described is that the chitta exists only for a moment, but it doesn't move through time. The rest of the universe, all the other dhammas, are streaming backwards through time. They arise in the future and they fall backwards. And when they cross the chitta, we're conscious of them. So in that way, the chitta, there is only one, you could say, broadly speaking, eternal or essence of chitta, but it only exists for a moment. But that moment is outside of time. It's not part of the linear sequence of time. And also would say, when thinking and talking about chitta and vijnana, to be very cautious not to reify these concepts, not to make them into substantial entities. And I think this is where a lot of the misunderstanding comes in, and it comes in as inevitability of human language, the way we have to talk about it. Even in Pali, we have to use nouns like chitta and vijnana, whereas there's no reference. When we use a noun, it sort of implies a reference to an existent thing, but there is no thing there. There's just a process of knowing without any substance or base to it. So if we take it that way, as absolutely empty of substance, then it's really a meaningless distinction to say whether it exists in a momentary way or it exists as some kind of concept outside of time. So, I mean, there's a lot. That's a really big topic, the nature of chitta. And it's a very important one. It's one that it's worth contemplating, worth trying to understand. Is there a difference between volition and thought? If so, where can I learn about it? Well, you can learn about it by studying Abhidhamma. There is a difference. A thought will have an intention behind it. Intention, cetana, is less than a thought. But it's the impulse behind a thought. A thought is a sankhara. It's more of a formation. It's more developed. Is nibbana outside of time? Yes, we could say that. Or again, anything we say about nibbana is always tricky. If you want to be really precise, you could, instead of saying it's outside of time, say it has no reference to time. Time is an irrelevancy when we're talking about nibbana. It's akaliko. What could outside of time possibly mean? Well, no reference to linear time. Like 1 moment, 2 moment, 3 moment. That doesn't apply. It's difficult for us to visualize because our minds are stuck in linear time. So I think we'll stop there in this linear time, getting close to the hour in linear time. So we'll leave it at that. And next week we'll do contemplation of sangha, which rounds out this section. And then there's 3 more contemplations after that. Okay.